So, remember when I said that Silent Hill DX is referred to as mobile on the wiki? Well, here we have Silent Hill Mobile too. Except it's not a sequel to DX, it's a sequel to Orphan, released almost 1 year later. Amazing, right? Why they bother changing the name is beyond me. It doesn't take place at an orphanage anymore, I guess, but it is a direct sequel, and the orphans are still very much at the center of the story. Anyway, I'm just happy that the first game's cliffhanger was resolved after all, but let's start from the beginning. We are again greeted by the tutorial, and see that the one pointless interaction method, the mouth, is gone. The only other gameplay tweak, by the way, is that you can now turn left, right and back, instead of only ever facing one direction. In the corridors at least, not in the rooms. The rest is the exact same, down to the need to interact with something in order to access your inventory and read unrelated notes. I will never get over this. After the tutorial, you wake up in this bland, grey changing room as Lucas, a previously unknown character. You don't remember anything, but a certain Karen, a character from the first game, is talking to you telepathically. She's trying to make you remember, telling you things like your name, and speaks to you throughout the whole game. Your goal is to figure out what is going on, who you are, and what exactly Karen wants. And to do that you go through this hospital, look for clues, solve puzzles, and fight enemies. A true Silent Hill game, you might say. But one thing disappointed me right off the bat. Why a hospital? The orphanage was such a cool and creative setting. The only other Silent Hill game to feature one is the fourth one, and you're only there for like a minute. So having it as the main setting in Silent Hill Orphan was super interesting, and I hoped for more of that or other creative settings. But hospitals are extremely common in the franchise, and this isn't even one we know, making me wonder just how many this town has. Also, why is it so tiny? At least with the orphanage the small size was explained, but a hospital? I'm not sure if it would be possible to explain that at all, but they didn't even try. And to then make it look this bland on top of that? I mean, all the corridors look the same. Even in the other world, they only got a reddish filter and nothing else changes. I really didn't like that. But at least the rooms here look really good, especially the first one with the dripping blood. They really outdid themselves here. By the way, you can enter the other world at any point again, except this time it's by staring at an upside down triangle? And the other world actually feels meaningful in this game. At no point did I think of it as a pure puzzle device, despite the ability to switch anytime. No idea how they managed that, but it's really cool. And so is the music compared to the first game at least. Not only do you get more tracks, most of them are actually okay. Nothing too special in its own, but given the first game's terrible sound design, it was very refreshing. Don't get me wrong, most of the game is still silent, but whenever you do get to hear some music, it's always different and always better than in the first game. The only track I didn't like is the one that plays when you switch back to the normal world. And not only does the game have more music, it also has more puzzles. Way more. I like that. Though there are sadly also some I didn't understand even after looking them up. Best case scenario would of course be to understand all of them, but I'd still take this over no puzzles. It just made it feel more like a survival horror game. Just like the battles. There are only 4 enemies in this entire game, 3 normal ones and the final boss, but the normal ones appear at such random places where you had just been before that they were way more unpredictable here. And I also like the abundance of locked doors, or generally things I had to find other things for to be able to progress. The map was also improved. While it is again completely marked from the beginning and doesn't change even when you open locked doors, and while having less accessible rooms than the first game, this one manages to feel bigger simply because there are more rooms on the map, even though you never even enter half of them. Having them on the map increases the perceived scale and immersion, and then some of the ones you do get to enter are also locked at first and often tied to puzzles for which you need other items or hints from other places. This is something the first game really lacked and I loved it. The only thing I didn't understand about the map is this dead end. And this one. But overall, everything about this game managed to feel even more like survival horror than the first one did. And by the time you reach the end, you will see that the story took a very different turn than you would expect. Arguably a more twisted one, with one of the plot points being someone trying to revive the murdered children from the orphanage. That was something. And it ends on a cliffhanger again, making me really excited for the third and last game. At this point I was so much into the story that I just needed to know how it concludes. Yet despite all of this, Silent Hill Mobile 2 left a bit of a bitter taste. The more generic setting and all the hallways looking the same, including in the other world, kinda bothered me. and that the normal world rooms look so bland, and that the story, while being an interesting and meaningful middle chapter, just doesn't have that sense of mystery the first game had. It's very twisted and takes turns you wouldn't expect, but the premise is amnesia, while the premise of the first game is a survivor of a mass killing returning to the orphanage where it happened 3 decades later. It's just much more intriguing and less cliché. And the first game also had more twists, and didn't go as over the top, still staying believable for a Silent Hill story, which I can't exactly say here. This one goes full supernatural, and I just didn't like that as much, on top of this game being noticeably shorter. The puzzles were more interesting here, and I liked the battles more, and the music. I liked playing it more, but there is more to a game than gameplay, and overall I still prefer the first one. So let's see what the third and last one has to offer.